What happens when the most powerful central bank in the world collides with the criminal justice system? Not over interest rates, not over inflation, but over a building. At least that's the story. So what we're going to take a look at for you one of the most consequential institutional confrontations in modern U.S. economic history. Not that it is that unusual in the sense that historically, US presidents have tried to pressure the Fed once before, many times. The US prosecutors have issued a grand jury subpoena to the Federal Reserve. This is serious. You go to jail for things like that. And threatening a criminal indictment tied to the Federal Reserve Chairman Powell congressional testimony about the Fed's headquarters innovation. You might have remembered, basically saying that this is not real. You're overspending the people's money. This is not a partisan story, and this is not a personality story. It's not about drywall, asbestos, or marble finishes. This is a story about power, credibility, and the fragile boundary between accountability and political control. So let's start with the facts first, not speculation. So the Federal Reserve has confirmed that it has received grand jury subpoenas from the Department of Justice related to Chair Powell's testimony before Congress concerning the Fed's multi-year renovation of its Washington headquarters. Powell himself has publicly stated that prosecutors have threatened a criminal indictment tied to that testimony. This is extraordinary, and I wish my subscribers and members could understand how much of a risk that is. Not because no official should ever face scrutiny, but because of this is sitting chair of an independent central bank. And the alleged exposure is tied to congressional testimony, not personal enrichment. He didn't make any money from that, right? So what about the project itself? What is this about? So the Federal Reserve undertook a major renovation of its historic Washington facilities, including the Eccles building, in an adjacent structure, which costs rising from roughly $1.9 billion to approximately $2.5 over several years. The Fed has attributed the increase to hazardous, material remediation, historic preservation constraint, post 9/11 security hardening, and changes required to comply with modern building codes. In other words, the same drivers that plague virtually every large, secure legacy government renovation project. But here is the critical point. Cost overruns are not crimes. Criminal exposure only arises if prosecutors can prove knowing false statement, material mispresentation, or intent to deceive Congress. And that is where the real battle lies. What do we not know and why it matters? As of now, the public does not know four things. Which specific statements in Powell's testimony are alleged to be false? 2, whether discrepancies reflect evolving project data or intentional deception. 3, whether investigators are focused on testimony alone or broader procurement or governance issue. And 4, whether any alleged misstatements were materials to Congress. These distinctions are not technicalities. They are the difference between administrative embarrassment and criminal liability. A witness can be wrong, a witness can rely on staff, a witness can speak accurately based on information available at the time, and criminal law requires intent. And until that intent is demonstrated, the case remains unresolved. But the institutional damage has already been underway, and that's the thing. Doesn't matter if he did it or not. I mean, you actually believe that he did it on purpose to make some money. on his own, which he hasn't, trying to save money. Who knows? Maybe he dealt with some crooked guy in there and told him something. He said yes, he didn't read it, didn't understand what's going on. But the point is this: the institution is being damaged. So the elephant in the room, this is not just a legal matter. This is an institutional stress test. And you see the administration right now stressing everything, stressing Venezuela, is stressing Iran, is stressing Europe and Ukraine and Russia, right? It's all over. Cuba. The Federal Reserve is designed to be three things. It's designed to be independent from elections, insulated from political retaliation, and empowered to make unpopular decisions, especially on inflation and rates. Take a look at what happened between Arthur Burns and the guy in the 70s, the president in the 70s, Nixon. Nixon and Arthur Burns, see how close they were, which made Arthur Burns the worst Fed chair in history. So markets do not price the Fed because it is perfect. Markets price the Fed because it is credible. And credibility is not statutory. Credibility is psychological. That's the reason gold is going higher and higher, because they don't know what's going on and they fear a certain decline here. Once investors begin to believe that criminal process can be used as leverage against monetary policy makers, the damage is not theoretical. It shows up in high-term premiums, weaker confidence in forward guidance, currency volatility, and rising inflation expectation. And it is already happening. Take a look at the 10-year yield. It is higher than the Fed fund rates. That means the market does not really believe that the Fed believes that there's no inflation fear. The market knows the Fed is being pressured in lowering rates, which it is, lowering the rates, and they're saying, well, employment is a bit weak, and right? Yeah, but inflation is also still there. And you do not want to lower rates when you have inflation. Even if no indictment is ever filed, the threat itself alters incentives. The hard truth. The Fed is independent, but it's not immune, right? So let's be clear and balanced. The Fed Reserve is not above the law. It controls trillions of dollars in assets. It influences every mortgage, bond, and equity market on earth. Oversight is not optional, but independent and accountability are the same thing as prosecutorial intimidation. There's a difference between investigating fraud and creating pressure that coincide conveniently with political disputes, and history shows why that distinction matters. Now, of course, you got to be careful what you're listening out there, and this is why I want you to join this channel, right? The myth is that the Federal Reserve has always been independent. The reality is that independence has always been contested. After World War II, the Fed was effectively subordinated to Treasury financing needs. And until 1951, Treasury-Fed Accord reestablished monetary autonomy. So the independence was tested almost immediately. I said, wait, these people are going to control everything? No way. In the 60s, President Lyndon Johnson openly pressured Fed Chair William McChesney Martin to avoid rate hikes during an overheating economy. This is not new what the current administration is doing. Don't listen to the rhetoric. In the early 70s, as I said before, President Richard Nixon applied relentless pressure on Fed Chair Arthur Burns to keep policy easy ahead of the 1972 election. Now, why do they want rates so low? It's very simple. There is an inverse relationship between rates and stock prices, right? Rates go down, stock prices go up. Well, first of all, if you want to invest your money and you're not making any money in the stock market, and rates are really high, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9% risk-free, why would you bother getting into the stock market? And inversely, as you're lowering the rates and basically you cannot make as much money, so then you go back in the stock market. And frankly, it's also true from a time value of money perspective. There's an inverse relationship between rates and value. That's what it is. In the early 70s, like I said, Nixon applied relentless pressure on Fed Chair Arthur Burns, and it worked. Kept rates low while there was inflation tied to the event having to do with the Vietnam War. And what that caused huge amounts of inflation. We're talking 12, 13, 14%, where the next Fed chair, Paul Volcker, had to raise rates by like 14%, 15%. So we know this is not from speculation, but from the Nixon tape themselves. We know for a fact that he pressured Arthur Burns. The result? There was short-term political relief, long-term inflation catastrophe. The lesson is ambiguous. When the Fed bends to political pressure, the economy pays the price later. So, but the Fed is, let them work. They know what they're doing. All that thought. Let's talk honestly about the Fed's performance. The Federal Reserve has helped anchor inflation expectations for a decade after the Volcker era, stabilize financial markets in crisis, and preserve systemic liquidity when private markets. But it also made serious mistakes. The great inflation was not inevitable. It was enabled by policy accommodation and political interference. Right? The 70s, the 80s, that was tied directly to the fact that Arthur Burns said yes to everything that Nixon wanted him to do. Forecasting errors, delayed tightening, misjudgment about inflation persistence are recurring themes, including in the post-pandemic period. In fact, Powell himself admitted that he made kind of a mistake after COVID. He kept the rates too high for too long. He thought he thought that after COVID and because what happened with COVID, the money went into the system, right, to pay all these people to do nothing and to stay at home, understandably, because you couldn't go out. So all that money, trillions of dollars, was spent. And then when you release that, all that money went out and got spent because usually inflation is only caused by government expenditure, by the way. Okay, so to be clear. So all that money went up and it pushed up inflation. And the Fed looked at it, although coincidentally happened to be a Democratic president at that time. The rates went, the inflation went up, and the Fed said, well, this is going to be transitionary. It's not going to stick around. And it stuck around. And you say, well, I made a mistake. I should have raised rates a lot sooner, and I didn't. It's a mistake, and you admitted it. So the Fed is not infallible. But the solution to perfection is better governance, not coercion. That's a problem. So why is this case different? Well, this is what makes this moment distinct. And don't forget to join this channel, because we're not about telling you the news because you heard about the news, but we are here to tell you the risk coming up in the market, the economy, and in your job. We're looking for the black swan, that thing that nobody sees coming. And what does it mean? So this is not a president tweeting at the Fed. This is not rhetorical pressure. This is a criminal justice system intersecting with monetary authority over a non-monetary issue. When that door's open, it does not easily close. Future chairs will always ask, will unpopular rate hikes trigger investigation? Will testimony be weaponized retroactively? Will independence exist on when policy aligns with political preferences? So those are not abstract concerns. Those are governance risk. What the current administration is doing by shaking that tree, they're also shaking the trees with the European by saying, listen, we're not going to protect you anymore. So that forces them to start building their own armies. And there are huge opportunities here to make money, believe it or not, with defense stocks. And again, join my Patreon channel. I will talk about that. They're also shaking the tree in America. They say, you know what, the doctrine, right? The Monroe Doctrine, maybe this whole thing is mine, is ours. Greenland. Now, again, let's be careful when we talk about Greenland and these things. At the end of the day, this is not just a new idea. The U.S. has been trying to get good to Greenland for forever. They got Alaska from the Russia. You know, maybe they could Greenland from the Greenlandese. We'll see. But the point is, they're shaking that trees a lot. So, what are the three scenarios ahead? Let's talk outcome. Scenario one. The investigation narrows, prosecutors decline charges, and the Fed improves transparency around project governance. This is the least destabilizing outcome, right? So they decline the charges, and the Fed improves transparency around the project. Scenario two, charges are pursued, even weak ones. Market reacts negatively. Institutional trust erodes and monetary policy becomes politicized by precedent. Scenario three, a quiet institutional bargain emerges. Accountability reforms for the renovation project coupled with an explicit reaffirmation in monetary policy cannot be coerced through legal threat. The problem is that credibility, once damaged, is extensive to restore. So I have to think about this clearly. Here's a disciplined framework. You can believe that Congress deserves truthful testimony and that prosecutorial threats against a sitting Fed chair carry systemic risk. That's a word, systemic risk. This is what this channel is about. We're looking for that systemic risk. Now, you started something here. You can demand specificity from prosecutors and transparency from the Federal Reserve, and you must separate construction management failures from monetary policy legitimacy. If those lines blur, the institution weakens, regardless of who is right. So this story is not about marble floors or renovation budgets. It is about whether the U.S. can maintain a central bank that is accountable without being submissive, independent without being arrogant, and powerful without being politically captured. History is very clear on one point. When central banks lose independence, inflation always wins. Eventually, the only open question is whether this moment becomes a footnote or a turning point. And my concern is this is a turning point. After the U.S. did what it did in Venezuela, as much as you hate the guy down there, they did something that is highly unusual, but they've done it in the past. They've interfered with Latin America in many ways, many ways. It's just this time it feels a bit too much, a bit too strong. And then you could leave it at that, but now you're talking Cuba, you're talking Greenland, you're talking lots of different things. And then you're talking about that. Whoa, I mean, just one thing at a time, please. You're changing the diaspora of the U.S. But then again, you need to understand one thing. This is not some crazy idea. The U.S. is losing ground. The U.S. needs to do something major, and they may not have that much time to do it in.